Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. How are all my Big Four accountants and future Big Four accountants doing out there? Hope you guys are doing well. We have a lot lined up today. First, we are going to go over some news. Then we are going to go over a personal story about the best farewell email I've ever read. And then finally, I'm going to discuss whether something like the Google memo controversy can happen at the Big Four. First, let's go over some news. There were a lot of fines this month in August of 2017. The first one we'll be going over is the KPMG fine, or rather settlement. KPMG settled charges in the amount of $6.2 million on August 16th of 2017. And they settled with the SEC for their audit of Miller Energy. And they agreed to settle these charges without admitting any wrongdoing, which is typical with these accounting firms. Now, Miller Energy was previously charged with accounting fraud. They overstated the valuation of their oil and gas properties. They valued something that the company bought for only $5 million at $500 million. And this extreme increase in valuation is what helped the company go public when they most likely shouldn't have gone public. I mean, come on, man. As a partner, you don't notice an exponential appreciation in oil and gas assets? This just proves that most partners have no idea what they are doing, despite their title and appearance. It's more about how many years they have in the chair, how many years they've been at the Big Four firm they're at, and do they have enough white hair? And then that gets people comfortable enough to promote them. It's not a question of how technical you are, or if you can spot errors, or if you can reduce the firm risk. Whoever this partner was obviously did not see this huge valuation increase. And it's like, come on, they bought it for $5 million and just a few years later, it's worth $500 million. Come on, man. All right. That was KPMG. PwC has been having a great August of 2017. PwC has two fines. First, let's go over their botched audit of Merrill Lynch. Now, SEC rules require brokerages to hold customer money in segregated accounts that are shielded from creditor claims. Unfortunately, Merrill Lynch did not do this, and they exposed billions of dollars to creditors' claims. Now, they were fined $400 million by the SEC for this, and now PwC has to pay up for completely missing all of this as Merrill Lynch's auditor. PwC had to pay the PCAOB $1 million, which seems like chump change compared to the amount that Merrill Lynch had to pay. Now, the next fine we're going to talk about originates in the United Kingdom. PwC set a record in the UK. They were hit by the largest ever fine of £6 million. This is the largest ever fine levied by the Financial Reporting Council. The FRC found extensive misconduct by PwC on the audit of RSM Tenon. Hysterically enough, RSM Tenon was an accounting firm. Can you believe that? PwC auditing another accounting firm. And it was the UK's seventh largest accounting firm before it went belly up. PwC did not obtain sufficient audit evidence. PwC did not obtain sufficient audit evidence and did not exercise professional skepticism, aka they didn't see RSM Tenon's demise coming. So wow, that's a huge month of accounting fines and settlements, and we are only halfway through August. I think we need a break. And I want to utilize this break time to share a funny story. I want to talk about one of the best farewell emails I've ever read. First, let me give you some backstory. Back in the day, it was rare to have associates that weren't in the office all the time. But this was also around the time that hoteling became very big. Now, for those of you that don't know what hoteling is where you have to reserve a desk beforehand and then check into it when you come into the office. You don't have an assigned seat, which means you can move around the office. So that sets some backstory for the staff person and the farewell email they're going to send. And additionally, this staff person was rotating from one group to another group. And this means he didn't really have one person in any one group that he was reported to. One day he was reporting to one group, and the next day he was reporting to another. And he played both of these groups off of each other to his benefit. And I also think he was confused by the whole process of hoteling and being on a rotation. But this guy also had a huge ego. So even though there was confusion and he was in between groups, he still thought he deserved a promotion. Well, he didn't get promoted in the time frame that he expected, so he resigned. But before he resigned, he sent out an epic farewell email. And in this email, he proceeded to talk about how much he played Angry Birds in the office and what level of Angry Birds he reached. I'm not a big Angry Birds player, so I didn't understand that part. He also spoke about how he watched movies in the office when he had downtime, Basically when his stupid managers didn't give him enough work, as if it's everybody else's fault but his own. And he even aired other people's dirty laundry. He also talked about how he had to put one of his managers into a cab after that manager could no longer walk. The manager got too drunk at a happy hour, and he was so proud of himself for being the semi-sober one that could get his manager into that. He was just astonished that an adult at a Big Four firm drank too much. Come on, guy. But the most epic part of the email was a part about him not showing up to work for a period of time. He spoke about how he was rotating between groups and how he took advantage of this. And he took advantage of this time to not show up to work, and he stayed at home playing video games. He said that he reached the highest levels of FIFA soccer during this time. And one day, HR called him, and he was frightened. He thought his ruse was up. But nope, HR was calling to tell him that he received a spot bonus based on his superior performance. Amazing, right? This kid blew my mind with this email. The fact that he admitted all this, the fact that he admits how little work he did, and how he was essentially receiving a paycheck for doing nothing, and he wanted to resign. This sounds like a dream job to me, but now with this kid, he wanted the world, and he wanted it given to him for no reason. Not only did he want to get paid for playing soccer all day, but he wanted to get promoted and become partner for being the best FIFA soccer playing accountant. But that's not all, folks. Lastly, this kid ended his email by quoting Gangsta's Paradise from the movie Dangerous Minds. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the song, I'll try to sing the portion that he included in his email. All right, here we go. Power and the money, money and the power. Minute after minute, hour after hour, everybody's running, but half of them ain't looking. What's going on in the kitchen? But I don't know what's kicking. They say I gotta learn. Nobody's here to teach me. They can't understand it. How can they reach me? I guess they can't. I guess they won't. I guess they front. That's why I know my life is out of luck, fool. I know it's unbelievable, but that's what really happened. That's how he ended his email. With Gangsta's Paradise. Crazy, right? I guess through ending his farewell email with Gangsta's Paradise, he was saying that he was jaded and that management didn't know how to reach him. I guess he also thought he was a gangster. But I don't think it's your manager's job to be your parent and spank you when you act bad. You are expected to be a professional in the Big Four and not a child. This guy obviously did not care about his future, because an email like that severely limits your options in getting another job. Please, if you learn anything from me, don't send an idiotic farewell email like this if you leave the Big Four. Okay, with that, let's move on to our main story. Can what recently happened to Google happen to the Big Four? Could the Google memo become PwC memo, Deloitte memo, EY memo, or KPMG memo? First, let's go over what happened at Google. Google had a rogue engineer whose name is James Damore, and he wrote a memo stating that Google maintained an ideological echo chamber where some ideas are too sacred to be honestly discussed. And what he was trying to say is that if you are a conservative at Google, your opinion is not valued and it's not heard. But what's being talked about the most that came out of this memo is what he said about women. He said that there aren't as many women in Google because of their biology. He said women just aren't biologically made to be software engineers. And he also said that the gender pay gap was a myth. And I think that took away from any valid points he was trying to make in the memo, which I'm not sure he had any valid points, but any message he was trying to convey in that memo is now just turned into what he said about women, which was extremely offensive. He also said that the focus of diversity should be less on race and gender and more on ideological diversity. And I honestly think that was his main point, but that was masked by a bunch of other garbage that he put in there. And I think he thought that just attaching some graphs and quoting scholarly articles would give him some gravitas and no one would misconstrue what he said. Probably also thought he would be heralded as a hero, like the woman who spoke out against sexual harassment at Uber. Well, he was terribly wrong and he was fired by Google. But let's get back to our original question. Could this happen at the Big Four? In my opinion, definitely. I think it could 100% happen. The reason I think it could happen is because the numbers are way worse at Big Four. The makeup of male to female partners is a way worse ratio than Google's male to female employees. Male partners in large accounting firms make up over 80% of the accounting firm partners. And if you think that's bad, don't even look at racial diversity in accounting firms. Guess how many partners are white? Do you think it's 70%? Nope. 80%? Nope. Wrong again. Try over 90% of partners. I'll say it again. 90% of partners are white in the Big Four accounting firms. Now I'll put my spin on it. I work in a Big Four accounting firm on the East Coast. And in this accounting firm and another Big Four accounting firm I worked in previously, the thinking is very liberal as far as politics go. And partners are not afraid to speak their mind either. Even now in my office, partners speak about their hatred of Trump and how dumb Trump is. And I believe this is an echo chamber because they have their parrots who have the same exact ideas, repeat the same things back to them, and they all just say the same things and pat each other on the back. And those are just the employees that agree with them, though. So could you have a rogue employee who's a conservative write a manifesto about the echo chamber of liberalism? Yes, I believe so. And obviously this is more possible on the East Coast in New York or Boston or LA, where you have so many liberal people that aren't afraid about speaking their minds because they think everybody's liberal. So you could have a conservative within there write the same type of thing, but not go on a rant about how women are biologically incapable of making as much as men. It could be more pointed about conservative thinking. But let's go back to diversity. I think the more likely thing to happen within the Big Four would be for someone to write a manifesto or a memo on diversity. I've seen women discriminated against when it comes to pay and promotions within the Big Four accounting firms. I've also seen African Americans and Asians discriminated against in the Big Four. And it's not necessarily coming out and using racial slurs. It was about ratings and performance and raises and promotions. And within the Big Four, people don't even think about it because the Big Four is an echo chamber. Most of the people in power are white, so they are more likely to rate a low-performing white person as good or meeting expectations than they are a black person or a person of any other race. I've seen white people that have performed terribly rated way better than a person of color who is an excellent performer for no good reason. So do I think someone could come out of the Big Four and write a memo about the problems with diversity in the Big Four? Again, I will say yes, but they're more likely to post it on LinkedIn. And I think this is especially true in light of what recently happened at Deloitte. Now, as we covered in a previous podcast, Deloitte ditched their diversity programs, and I'll include a link to that podcast in the show notes. So, and them ditching these diversity programs comes at a really bad time. They did it right around this Google memo. And I'm wondering if they regret doing that now. I think it will be interesting to see how the Big Four handle diversity going forward after these two huge controversies coming out of Google and Uber. The Big Four will have to be extremely mindful about how they handle diversity going forward because they are extremely susceptible to diversity issues because they have such an extremely high ratio of white male partners and white male members of leadership. And that's why you need to make sure to subscribe to this podcast to stay tuned for any new diversity issues or Big Four news that comes up. And you also need to make sure to visit big4accountingfirms.com. That way you can stay up to date on all the Big Four news and diversity news in the Big Four. We'd also like it if you could share this podcast with a friend too, if you get a chance. Lastly, thanks for listening.